This is the 18 Strong Podcast with Jeff Pellizzaro, episode number 25.
Welcome to the 18 Strong Podcast, where you get direct access to the world's greatest experts on training harder, practicing smarter, and playing better golf. Now, here's your host, Jeff Pellizzaro.
Hello, what's up, everybody? This is Jeff Pellizzaro. I'm your host of the 18 Strong Podcast. I want to welcome you. If you're a long-time listener, thanks again for showing up. If you are a first-time listener, I want to thank you for tuning in, and hopefully we'll be able to keep you for a long time. In order to do so, feel free to subscribe to 18 Strong, the 18 Strong Podcast on iTunes if you're listening to us through the website, or you can also find us on Stitcher and soon to be on SoundCloud, all the different avenues where you can find the podcast and download it right into your phone or whatever, so you can listen on your commute and all that good stuff. As always, I very much appreciate all of you guys leaving the reviews that we've had. And so if you haven't left a review yet, would greatly appreciate if you went on, left a 5-star review, preferably. Always want an honest review of the 18 Strong Podcast, but 5 stars are obviously the best. And that definitely helps get the word out about the podcast, helps kind of give us a little bit of exposure, and hopefully makes us grow into a super brand and super podcast on iTunes. So I wanted to just read a quick review that I got from, as I promised, over in Great Britain, some of the overseas reviews. This one is by Kiwi Frog. I've just discovered the 18 Strong Podcast, and it really is fantastic. There is so much information that I'm sure is going to help my game. I'm committed to make a big improvement this year, and thanks to 18 Strong, I've got a great source of tips for improvement in health, fitness, and my mental game. Keep up the good work, Jeff. Thank you very much from all the way overseas. I really, really appreciate it, and it still just kind of boggles my mind that this is being downloaded in, I've now counted over 50 different countries, and it's just really cool, the power of the internet and how many people can be reached. So I love that I'm able to share the platform of all these great guests that I have on the show, and can share them with all of you guys. So thanks again for coming. And if you are a fitness coach, a mental game, a sports psychologist, or if you're just a golfer and you've got any kind of writing experience and you want to maybe share your message, shoot me a message. I'm always looking for a couple new people to do a little bit of writing on 18 Strong. And if you've got a background in some publication or writing, shoot me a message and we can kind of chat about possibly getting you on the site and giving yourself a little bit of exposure. I think it's really cool when it's not just my perspective being put out on the website. We've had some great articles written by some other authors, and I want to continue to do that and want to build the brand of 18 Strong as kind of a community of insights and people providing great information, so we can give you, the golfer, and even you, the strength coach, fitness coach, mental game, whatever it is that you're doing, we want to give you the best information as possible. So we've got a great show today. We've got two very interesting guys that I really, really had a good time talking to and have been keeping in touch with over the past week or so. Nick Clearwater, who is not just a teaching instructor to some of the PGA players and some LPGA and Champions Tour players, but Nick is also, he works with GolfTec and is basically the head of the quality of instruction at GolfTec in all of their locations across the states. I think he said 650 different instructors at the time that we were talking. And so he's kind of in charge of that entire umbrella, which I think is just amazing, the fact that they can control quality over such a broad spectrum. And then another gentleman by the name of Jim Keene from ARX, Adaptive Resistance Exercise, which we're going to talk a lot about today. And it's basically just a new technology for fitness, for strength training, for rehab facilities, and it's just some pretty slick technology that has really gotten some great reviews as far as at the PGA show and some different things. And we're going to talk about how the two of these guys, why they're on the same podcast, why they're working together, and how GolfTec and what Nick's doing and Jim and the guys at ARX are doing, and how that kind of all fits together. So we've got a great show. And I wanted to just touch on one thing that kind of ties in with what we're talking about in the episode today. But I was working with a client this week, and it really just kind of hit me. We were talking. He's an older gentleman. He came in. I think he's in his early 70s, loves golf, has played golf for a long time, still works full-time, loves what he does, loves his job. But the guy is in a chair at a desk all day long and has been for the past, 40 to 50 years. And so... and I doubt that he's listening, but I'm not going to share his name just in case I don't want to out him. But he honestly is probably the most inflexible person I have ever evaluated, and but the guy loves the game of golf and wants to make his golf game better. And so we're primarily working on just getting him some more mobility at some different areas and figuring out what kind of movements we need to work on. But we were discussing the fact that he's gone to several golf clinics and he's working on different things in his swing. But when you look at his swing, he's got so much lack of motion that it's going to be hard to make any real changes until we make some improvements in his movement. And he made a mention of the fact that he heard that the average age of the golfer that goes to some sort of a golf clinic, travels to a beautiful course, goes to a 3-day, 5-day clinic, whatever. The average age of that person is typically around, for males, is typically around 58 years old, which means these are typically the guys who have worked, up until this age, have finally accumulated a little bit of money where they have enough where they can go and travel and do these things, and they're now picking up golf and starting to play more, and they're really getting into it and getting excited, which is awesome. The problem with this is that a lot of people in this position wait until they get to this stage in their life to then decide, oh, well, crap, now is when I need to start working on some of my movement, some of my posture, some of my flexibility, because it's affecting my golf game, because I can't make my backswing or turn my hips or whatever. And so then they try to start making these physical improvements, these changes in health. They start to realize that, they're not bulletproof, they're not going to live forever, and they need to start eating better and things like that. So this gentleman just kind of made me realize that the things that we're doing, the things that we're talking about on the podcast here are so important. And I think that as a guy of my age 36 at the current time, and guys that are younger, that are playing golf, that are working, that are starting their families, that are very busy. If you're in this situation where you're at a desk all the time, you're in your car all the time, you're on sales calls, whatever, don't take for granted the fact that you've got good physical movement and mobility and you're young and all this stuff is going for you right now. Don't let it slide and not do this stuff because right now it doesn't seem that important to you. Because I guarantee that this gentleman, if he could take it all back and start it all over again, he would start doing the things regarding flexibility, strength training, eating better. He would change all that in a heartbeat, and he would give who knows how much amounts of money to be able to take that time back to get back these physical abilities. So I just wanted to throw that out there before we jump in with Jim and Nick, because I think it's such an important topic that I haven't really touched on in this way before. And working with him this week just kind of made me realize, for myself personally, there's things that I can do better. There's things that I can pay more attention to and not take for granted just because I'm a relatively young guy. That can swing a golf club without pain or discomfort and can get through most positions. But it's not always going to be like that if I don't continue to work at that stuff. So take that as it is. And now hopefully you guys will enjoy the episode with Nick Clearwater and Jim Keene. All right, guys, welcome to the 18 Strong Podcast. Thanks for coming on.
Hey, thanks for having us.
Hey, thanks, Jeff.
You got it. So for the audience out there, we've got two special guests today. We have Nick Clearwater and Jim Keene. And I'm going to let these guys kind of go into their own background, tell their own story, because they've got some dandies for you. And then we're going to get into talking about, what these guys are doing in the golf world and some really cool things that are coming basically to the golf world technology-wise, practice-wise, and fitness-wise. So, Nick, I'm going to let you go ahead and get started. Just give the audience a little bit of background about you, how you got into doing what you're doing, and what you guys are doing now, and then Jim, we'll jump over to you.
Sure. Thanks, Jeff. So I would start by saying that I work for a company called GolfTec. It's the largest organization of golf instruction in the world, really. They teach about 26% of the golf lessons in North America. So we're a large company, do a lot of business on the golf teaching and equipment side, and we're getting pretty new into the golf conditioning side as well. When I'm not doing that or training all the coaches, I teach on the PGA Tour and a little bit on the Champions Tour and the LPGA Tour as well. So the rest of the story is pretty boring after that, Jeff.
I highly doubt that, Nick, and I'm going to make you divulge a little bit more information as we go. But let's get over to you, Jim. And I know that Nick loves to talk about your wonderful mustache, so we got to mention that you are the mustached man, and we're going to put some pictures up. But give us a little background about you, and one of the big reasons why we have you on the show to talk about what is known as ARX, or adaptive resistance exercise.
That's right. So if you go to the show notes and click on the link, you might see some videos with a particularly virile gentleman with a glorious lip sweater, and that's me. And my background is a little bit off the wall. I started out as a musician. I was a trumpet player. I toured with Broadway tours for about 5 years after college, and I was like 265 pounds. I was a big boy. And so then I got smaller and smaller and regular sized and learned a lot along the way. But then I became aware of the early prototypes of ARX equipment, and I came off the road. I got our Omni, a previous generation of the ARX Omni, and I put it in my living room here in Wrigleyville in Chicago. And I opened Keen's Brick Fit House. And Keen's Brick Fit House was people, God bless them, would come down to my living room and get a workout. And that's how I became aware of the equipment. I started out as a customer like that. And so then it kind of morphed into me calling the powers that be at the company and saying, hey, the software ought to be like this. Your handles should be like this. Your belt should be like this. And finally, now I'm the director of sales for ARX. And so I have a hand in writing the copy, making the videos, helping design the software and hardware, and kind of a jack of all trades for the company.
Awesome. And so if you could just give us a brief description of what ARX is. We're going to get into it in a lot more detail later on, and all the benefits and what it's being used for and how it's tying into the golf community. But just so the listeners have an idea when we speak about ARX, give us just a little snippet.
Yeah, ARX is a machine that has a footprint about the size of a large couch. And on this machine, you can do strength training routines of any combination. So any muscle group, any movement pattern, and it's motorized resistance. And the motor moves at a constant velocity, and you exert against the motor. And while you do so, there's a computer readout in front of you that allows you to quantify precisely what you're doing against the motor. And, of course, you show up the next time, and the software has your game saved in there, and you compete against a previous version of yourself. So it's strength training, but like we'll talk about a little bit later, none of the limits that are inherent in gravity-based tools. So motorized, computerized strength training.
Awesome. And so at this point, a lot of the audience is probably thinking, well, why are these two guys on together? And so, Nick, I want you to talk a little bit more about GolfTec, and I have a couple questions to ask you just about GolfTec in general, and then you mentioned getting into the fitness and conditioning side. So before we get into the fitness stuff, give the audience. I know a lot of the listeners have heard of GolfTec, might know some of the stuff that you guys do, but can you expand a little bit on what you guys do as far as instruction and that type of stuff, and where you're located?
Sure. We've got 180 improvement centers across the country, about 650 coaches, give or take, teach at those facilities. We do half of our instruction indoors, maybe half of it is outdoors at local area golf courses as well. And the GolfTec name, the TEC, actually stands for technique, equipment, and then the C is for conditioning. So what we're doing is using the ARX machines and the software to run a little test to see if we can use this to help golfers. And I suppose the main mission of GolfTec is really to help people play better golf, but in a way I'm looking for GolfTec to actually become more of a problem-solving company for golfers. A lot of our clients work out, but they don't necessarily work out in very efficient, effective, or useful ways for golf. And we see a huge benefit for using the ARX equipment to for a client to come in, take a golf lesson, do a little practice afterwards, and then run through 15, 20 minutes of strength and conditioning to develop a little hypertrophy and come back again next week.
All right, so I think this is perfect because the GolfTec, the people that are going to be going into GolfTec are very much the same people that are listening to this show. And I'm sure that quite a few of the audience have actually been to your places, have gone through some of the instruction. First, just on the instruction side, I know that you're kind of the director of quality for all 650 of these instructors. So with that, knowing that, how do you keep quality, and how do you make sure that you have the quality instructors and everybody's kind of teaching the same thing, or where does it go from systems to the individually of the coach? Because I know that there's a big importance on just a coach's style and their personality and how they work with somebody. So how do you deal with all that?
Yeah, definitely. Well, I'd like to say that's easy to do, Jeff, but that's probably the hardest part of it all. When you get hired on to be a GolfTec coach and you decide that's what you want to do, you end up spending 10 days in Denver at our headquarters running through what we call GolfTec University. So the coaches at that point get a little taste of our systematic approach of teaching and the fact-based measurement system that we use within every single lesson. We use motion measurement with every one. And then after that, that's really given them a template to go home and refine their skills and teach the golf lessons basically as the coach sees fit, but in a very organized manner as well.
Gotcha. And then you mentioned, you'll have somebody come in for a lesson, come in for a practice session, and then you said 10, 15, maybe 20 minutes of hypertrophy training. So can you really get much done in that 10, 15 minutes with this ARX system?
Yes, well, definitely. So we've been conducting a test. Actually, I use Jim's old machine he just described from the Keen Brick Fit House.
Yeah.
Exactly. We've been using that at the GolfTec I train out of in Oak Brook, Illinois. And yes, that's a bit of why we're here today, really, is to explain that something like that actually is possible. I think that's the biggest hurdle that ARX faces right now is it's such a paradigm change for a lot of fitness professionals to think of a machine that Jim described very well earlier, that actually exists and that we can use that to really do some strength training in 10 minutes.
It's a little bit like where Henry Ford's trying to describe cars in 1890. And so people will ask, what does the car eat? What does it wear for shoes? And you're like, well, no, it's not quite like that. And so some of the assumptions are changing. Like the question that you asked was now, is this really possible in the 10 or 15 minutes? How is that possible? It's very much like someone a little over 100 years ago saying, well, I've never even heard of this. Everybody knows it takes about a week to go from Chicago to Indianapolis. And we say, no, it's like a 5-hour drive now. What? That's not possible. So what it ends up being is a more potent dose of the active ingredient of exercise. So there's a whole lot of limits that you're having to compromise to fight through when you're using standard, or as we like to call it, antique equipment. So we've removed those limits, and so what you have is very much a beer versus whiskey comparison. If you're having a lower concentration of that active ingredient, you need volume. You do. You need more. You need maybe a half hour to an hour. You need it 3-4 times a week. But all of a sudden, if you up the active ingredient and have a higher concentration of it, you require far less, and you require it far less often. And so the punchline is, Nick's been having people running through one weekly workout lasting not longer than 15, 20 minutes, and has seen, of course, the guys get bigger, just the usual strength training stuff. You get bigger, more explosive, you get faster, you get stronger. It's all the standard. It's still 100% effective, just like weights are. It's just that the results come with a small fraction of the time commitment and far more safely and far more conveniently. And it's the perfect level of resistance all the time because it adapts to you in real time.
Yeah, and I have to say here that, when I first initially heard a little bit about ARX, it was kind of like, what's this gimmick? What's going on? But, after the PGA show, and I wasn't there, but I've seen comments from some people that I really respect in the strength training and conditioning world, saying things like this is, one of the most innovative things that they've seen, one of the most innovative things that they saw at the PGA show, and that it's going to kind of really make its way into not just golf fitness, but just fitness in general, and the way that people are working out. And so I can't say how excited I am to go and try one of these. So I got to find out from you guys where I can actually go to test one of these babies out.
You got to come take a spin.
But, I have been seeing a lot of good reviews, and also, just when you look at the science of it, and you look at, last week we had a guest, or 2 weeks ago we had a guest on, and he's a strength and conditioning coach, and he talked a lot about, just different protocols for fat loss and strength training, but, the importance of time under tension and things like that, and how this stuff really, if you break it down, makes sense when you're talking about it. So, Jim, I'm going to have you kind of just expand a little bit more on, give us some more details on how the machine works. And, as I was watching the videos, and I'll post some videos on the show notes page here because, the videos really show you how hard these individuals are working and, the way that the machines are situated and what exercises you can do. But give us a little more description on how the machine actually works. You mentioned how it's almost like a game where you're fighting against yourself.
Yeah, it moves at a constant velocity, and that's the first thing to realize is that the speed, the velocity of it, is going to keep going at its same pace, and there's nothing that you or I or anybody can do about it. The trainer controls this speed, and the trainer controls when it moves by pressing a handheld device. So what this means is that it's adaptive in nature. If you push with 10 pounds, you get 10 pounds of resistance. If you push with 50, you get 50 back. And so we have big, strong guys doing their damnedest to try to stop this damn machine, and they just can't do it. But in the meantime, they get a great workout. And we also have people, baby boomers and older, who don't want to work that hard. And, of course, it's adaptive, so that's great. They just give me about a half effort, and they get half back, and they're happy too. So the basic principle is that your strength changes during movement. There are three big ways that our strength changes. But our weight that we've chosen, if we're in the gym and we're strength training, the weight stays the same weight all the time, which is a bummer. The first and biggest way is negative to positive, lowering a weight to lifting a weight. You can control the descent of a far heavier weight than you could have lifted in the first place. So think of a bench press, and we all kind of understand that. Okay, yeah, we can lower a heavier weight than we could have lifted. So our potential strength skyrockets during that lowering phase of the movement, but the weight that we've chosen just stays the same weight. So that's an inefficiency there. Also, we're way stronger at the beginning of a set than we are at the end of a set once fatigue is set in. So at the beginning of a set, we could be doing more, but we're not, because that's a 1-rep max, and your set would be over pretty quick. And so then another way is at every different joint angle, you have different leverage advantages and leverage disadvantages. And you're forced to compromise in some positions. We're stronger holding a barbell out away from us than we are when it's right at our chest. So we have to choose the heaviest weight that we can still get up off our chest. So these are the three big ways that our strength changes and skyrockets, but the weight we've chosen just stays the same weight all the time. So that represents an inefficiency, and you experience a lot of times when you could be working harder, but you're not, because of the compromises you've been forced to make by the tools you've chosen, in this case, a weight. So what if you had a magical barbell that could match you at any time? What if you did a 1-rep max and then your magical barbell gave you slightly less weight for the next rep, so you could keep going, so your set could continue? What if these peaks, these maximal eccentric peaks when you're lowering a weight, well, what if you had a magic barbell that could load you up on the eccentric, load you up when you're lowering? So that's basically what we do with ARX. It allows you to fulfill your muscular potential at all times. So a weight is the same weight the whole time, and if you lift 100 pounds, you have to lower 100 pounds, even if you could have lowered 200, 300, maybe 400 pounds. So you're leaving a lot of meat on the bone when you're using inefficient equipment. And like I mentioned before, when you use this inefficient equipment, you have a lower concentration of the active ingredient, and so you need more volume. And it's an inefficient and kind of dangerous way to do it. So with ARX, again, same final result. It just happens far more safely, far more conveniently, and far more quickly.
So basically, I mean, it's getting rid of a lot of the different limitations that you have with just pure gravity training.
Absolutely. And like fatigue, for instance, when is injury most likely to occur? Well, it's the first repetition when your fresh strength is enough to injure yourself. But then it gets more dangerous at the end when we've all experienced a weight that was appropriate for the first, second, and third repetition all of a sudden becomes inappropriate right around rep 8, 9, 10, 11. So that same heavy weight that you selected to challenge your fresh strength is now being applied to your fatigued musculature. And so now things shift. Now you're wiggling a little bit. Now you're shaking a little bit. And it's really easy to have a strain, a tear, a pop, a rupture, something like that. So again, with ARX, no matter how deeply you fatigue yourself, it is matching you. So it can never be an excessive amount of weight, no matter how fatigued you get. So that's one of the huge pitfalls of gravity-based resistance, is that you're stuck with this weight you selected. You lifted the weight and you've made a commitment to lower this weight. And so good luck. Over a long enough training career, even one mistake can be very costly, and an injury is an unacceptable result of exercise.
Absolutely. And you're right, that's where the injuries occur. It's when we start to compensate, start to use other parts of our body to get through those ranges of motion, and bad things happen when you start to get tired and you're trying to handle a weight that you shouldn't be handling. So I love the analogy of the magical barbell, and the analogy you had before, the beer versus whiskey, was fantastic. So Nick, let's get back to you, and let's talk a little bit about some of the players that you're working with and coaching, and how have you started to implement this with them, and what results have they been seeing?
Yeah, definitely. So like Jim said, this isn't necessarily a magical machine made of unicorn tears, but it is entirely safe for your average guy who walks through the door. And I would say the main consumer for GolfTec is a golfer who plays a lot of golf and shoots between 90 and 100 and really wants to improve. So they also tend to be the least fit of all the golfers that potentially step on a golf course as well. So as I explained earlier, our protocol is to give a half an hour golf lesson, let them come in, do a big 4 workout, more or less a push-pull, a leg, a belt squat to some degree, and then a row. So we've got 4 main exercises, total body workout. Jim's explained how intense it is, and it really is until you get on this machine. Jim and I could talk about it all day, but the eccentrics especially are so incredible that after 3 or 4 reps, you've done a lot of muscle damage. So it doesn't take very long to really, really get a good, strong workout. So the golfers that I've been training, some of them, let's say after about 6 months, I would say the typical golfer is putting on a lot of muscle mass relative to whatever strength training program they'd used before. And some of them are increasing distance with their driver 10 to 20 yards in a short amount of time. A lot of them just look physically stronger and discuss a lot about how much easier it is to play the round of golf, and they have much more energy coming down the stretch of the last 4 or 5 holes as well. So that's really the workout. It's very short, simple, 4 quick exercises, 2-minute sets of each one. And we're really in and out of there in about 12 minutes. And the metabolic conditioning workout that's going into that as well, from doing hard work with muscle, it's just it's a one-stop shop, basically, is what we've turned GolfTec into for golfers.
It's interesting. I think that things can get so complicated in the strength and conditioning or fitness world, and you start to see all these different crazy exercises that are out there. But we had Dr. Mark Smith on, who is one of the advisors for TPI, and one of the things that I thought was brilliant that he said was just when you need to go get a workout, it doesn't have to be this elaborate, drawn-out program all the time. There's definitely a place for a structured program, but if you're at a hotel and you need to get something in quick, basically do your push, your pull, your lunge, your squat, that type of stuff, which is pretty much what you guys are saying here is you're touching the big 4. And, if you can get somebody stronger in those different exercises, you're really kind of hitting the whole source of it.
Yeah, and there's this idea of my golf muscles versus the other muscles in my body.
Yeah, let's touch on that a little bit. Go ahead, Jim. I'm sorry, didn't mean to interrupt. I just like the term golf muscles in air quotes.
Yeah, it's a great topic.
Expand, Jim, please.
You like. Now you have skill patterns and you have things you want to groove in, and that's what the lessons are for, your skill-specific lessons. But if you are not strong, you're shooting a cannon from a canoe. There's no stability there on which to place this skill set. So you find people 13th hole, 14th hole, 15th hole, and they're pretty done. Fatigue has set in. Now they get wobbly. Now they're fatigued, and they don't have the fatigue skill set because you practice when you're fresh, right? So to be strong is like the foundational base of what you're doing as an athlete. So there are a lot of golfers out there who currently don't have a serious strength training program, not because they don't think it's therapeutic or good, but because it's time consuming to learn. They're not sure which program to do. They can't quantify anything, and they're probably just going to hurt themselves, to be honest. So that is a huge problem that GolfTec is now solving by incorporating ARX workouts. You can go in there and you don't have to select the program. You don't have to figure out how much weight, the guessing game of how much weight do I do, how many reps, and how much time, and all the rest. It's all done for you. And then, aside from all that, you can go work on the skills of your swing. So first, let's get those big prime movers as strong as we possibly can, build you a bigger engine, and then separate from that, when you're fresh, you can groove in the skill set that you need to be successful in your sport. So when you separate these two things, each one is maximally effective. Some people have the well-meaning but a little bit misinformed notion that all you got to do is take that golf motion and you have to apply heavier weights to it. So weighted clubs or a weighted vest or weighted wrist, or they've found a million different ways to do it. And the problem is that you befuddle your original skill set and you have sub-maximal strength work, suboptimal strength work. So you're getting a diluted dose of both, which is a bummer because you could be having great practice and then getting great strength training, and then you rest and recover, and you're just a better human with a bigger engine who has fatigue set in later and later and later in the round until finally you don't have any fatigue set in. So having those separated is a very important point in anybody's training, no matter what the tool is they're using for their strength training.
I think that's a great point, and we've touched on this a lot in the 18 Strong website and podcast. That, you know, if you look at any other sport, any other athlete, let's take a pitcher for instance, which is, you know, in many ways like a golfer, where they're starting from a static position. They have to control their mechanics, but you don't see a pitcher just going into a gym and working on like weighted throws and, you know, just rubber band exercises just for their throwing arm. These guys are, you know, some of the most powerful and strong guys out there. You look at some of these pitchers and how big their lower trunk is and how big their legs are, and, you know, the stuff that they work on in the gym is not, you know, learning how to throw a ball harder. It's learning how to move faster, be more explosive, and get stronger, because all that translation of force from the ground through their lower body, their torso, then translates into the velocity of that ball, much like swinging a club. And I like the term of befuddling your original skill set, because if you start throwing weights onto your rotational movements, and there's a time and place for, you know, rotational power type exercises, but if you start trying to mimic your swing with a cable and a bunch of weights tied to it, you're just teaching your body to move at different speeds with different resistances that isn't really the same thing as what you're doing in your golf swing.
Exactly. It's like that old baseball donut situation, right, where they did the study where they put the guys with the donuts on their bats in the on-deck circle and the guys without the donuts on the bats in the on-deck circle. And they found that, that donut on the bat doesn't help, and in fact, it kind of hurts. Yeah, the bat feels lighter when you go up to the plate, but you've trained your whole life to swing a bat that was a certain weight. And so you have this incredible combination of synapses and neurons and mind-muscle connection, and your body has grooved this in. And then you go mess it up by adding a 5 or 8 ounce donut on the end. Yeah, it feels better right now because the bat feels light, but it doesn't help in the end. You've just befuddled your original skill. And so a lot of golfers do the same things when they think to themselves, yeah, it makes sense that I could get stronger just doing a golf swing with heavier stuff or adding resistance to a golf motion. Sure, yeah, that'll make me stronger. That'll make me better. when the truth is, not only is it suboptimal strength training, you're really messing with your golf lesson in the first place.
Right, and I couldn't agree on that anymore from the golf instruction side. The two variables you have that you're trying to maximize as a golfer is your motor program, for one, or your skill set, how good you are at performing it. And then ultimately you're trying to be the biggest, strongest, fastest person you can to execute that motor pattern as well as you possibly can. And the two need to be trained totally separate to really get to where you want.
And Nick, are you using this technology with some of your tour players as well?
I haven't had anyone on it yet. There's interest on it. I'm waiting for the day that somehow this can get into the PGA Tour trailer. I'm sure it will eventually. Or even you're talking about other professional sports. The first time an NFL player gets a shot at doing this, it's going to really, really has the potential to change the world for that. Because as a golfer, what a lot of the tour players could do is show up to the event Monday night, travel from wherever they need to, do a workout that takes maybe 20 minutes, have a couple days to recover, play their practice rounds, and be as fresh and strong as they need to. I see so many guys like Zach Johnson and a lot of other guys working out every single day, and this could just make their life so much easier and their workouts so much more efficient.
And there's a big thing to be said about the time efficiency, Nick, like you just mentioned. We always stress that every hour that you spend in the gym is an hour that you are not at the range, is an hour that you are not with your family, is an hour that you're not sleeping, recovering, focusing on other things outside of your workout. So you got these guys who are working out 6, 7, 8, 9, even 10 hours per week. Well, if they were using something efficient, a potent dose of what they're trying to get in low concentration in the gym, if you give them that, it's like you're giving them 6 to 8 hours per week extra. And what could a highly motivated guy do with 6 or 8 extra hours every week? And especially compound that over a month, over 2 months, 3 months. That's a huge competitive advantage, not just that you're getting the benefits of the workout, but that you are, and it's hard to quantify things that don't happen, but think of the injuries you are not getting during training because you're now using ARX, and the time you are now not wasting because your workouts are the peak of efficiency, and you're really maximizing your time in the process. So huge opportunity for a lot of guys.
For sure. And then I'd also say that compliance is really a huge, huge problem for everyone's exercise selections, whatever it is. And if you have to do this one day a week and it's such a short time, that's one of the biggest hurdles that we don't even really have to tackle while using the equipment.
Yeah, and I would say that another piece of that whole time efficiency thing is, you get somebody in the gym, and for me as a fitness guy, a therapist, people want to come into the gym and they want to work out, right? But if they have something where they know that they're getting the strength component of it and it's not taking up as much time as they need, most of the time what we find, especially with your non-tour players that don't have a whole entourage of medical people, most of us need to just fix the problems that we already have, right? So This would give us a lot more time to work on some of those corrective exercises and getting people, the flexibility that they may need, or the different stability that they need on more of an individualized basis, and kind of target some of those things. And, as the strength, I'm sure a lot of the strength coaches out there are thinking, oh, yeah, right, we can't, 20 minutes a week or whatever. What's going to happen to my client load, all this stuff. But, if you're really looking to get your clients and your golfers the most out of their treatment program, you want to give them the most efficient stuff. And so maybe it's the matter of, okay, now we can really focus and educate on the importance of fixing these other things, and then do the strength training portion where we're getting the highest dosage possible.
Sure,
right.
Jim and I aren't saying that the unicorn tears here is the only solution to fitness. It's just an awesome tool, and if you don't try it, you're really missing out on something special.
It's just a great tool to have in the tool belt, right? So for a trainer of athletes, we all know there's so much stuff that we need to be doing for these guys, and so all ARX doing is really taking that the most time-consuming and most dangerous portion of the training, the max effort day, the heavy day, right? You're taking and that part that makes you feel like a bag of crap for the next day or two in your joints because you're trying to pull hundreds of pounds and whatever you're trying to do. It takes that portion and makes it the safest, most quantified, and most efficient part. So that, just like you mentioned, Jeff, the idea that, all right, we're going to do this ARX thing, that's our strength component, that's our max effort part. Oh, this is great. It was all done without injury, and it's all done so quick. Now we can focus on mobility, stability, fixing the problems, fixing imbalances. Hell, anything you want. Massage, acupuncture, you read them a bedtime story. Anything you want to do with your time, you now have all this free time with which to do that. And so ARX kind of gives the trainer, gives the business owner a huge leg up in that department. Plus, you're a hero now because for your strength work, you always select the appropriate amount of resistance, which is a little joke we say because obviously the resistance just adapts in real time to the user. So me, I'm a hero when I train people. I always choose the right resistance. I never have to change seats. I never have to change seat backs. I don't keep charts. I don't have to deal with a stopwatch or a trip counter. My life is so much easier in all these ways. I just throw them on the machine, move them through the appropriate range of motion. I decide for them, and they can do it or not. And it's up to them. They can get whatever they want out of it. Maybe they had a long night last night. They're a little hungover. They get whatever workout they can do. Maybe they slept great, and maybe they're ready to blow it out of the water. They're not limited by me selecting a lower weight than maybe they could have handled that day. So this is a huge leg up for the business owner, and especially because this room full of equipment now can be condensed down into, again, one machine that's about the footprint of a big couch.
Right. That's a good point that you mentioned, somebody that is maybe hungover or doesn't feel great that day. There's a lot of research going on right now just about the quality of training when somebody is neurologically not ready to do what you are expecting them to do that day. So if last week, they squatted, 135 pounds, and you bring them in and they're feeling like crap, but you throw 135 pounds on the bar because that's what they did last week, again, recipe for injury if they're not ready to tolerate that.
And a diagnostic tool as well. ARX is fantastic because we precisely quantify everything that happens. And so you can use ARX to figure out whether a guy's ready to train again. You can use it as an adjunct to see how strong is somebody, what are they like before and after a 2 or 3 month course of training. So have somebody do some performance of some exercise, and we're tracking cumulative output. We track peak force output, work over time, elapsed time, and all these things in a very easily readable and intuitive format. So you can tell a lot about what's going on inside an athlete's body recovery-wise. Like if they are 15.3% underneath their performance from the last time, well, let's not even have them do this heavy workout. They're not recovered yet. Let's do some other stuff. Let's do some mobility stuff. Let's do some Metcon stuff. It's a fantastic diagnostic tool for that purpose, to avoid beating athletes into the ground. And you can see red flags and canaries in the mine shaft in the ARX software that you might not be able to recognize if you're just looking at sets and reps and time under load. So a huge potential there as well.
Awesome. All right, and for all the listeners out there, as we were talking before the show, we were kind of joking that we didn't want this episode to turn into a commercial for ARX. but no, I mean, what I think is great is, we're tying into a lot of the different philosophies and different important pieces that the listeners need to think about when they're going into a strength training program, a golf fitness program, or teaching instruction. So this isn't just all about this technology. This is also about being smart when you're going in and training and learning to do the right things and figure out where are you going to get the most bang for your buck. And obviously these guys are finding technology that is helping to improve that. And again, I wouldn't put this out there if I hadn't heard such great things about it from some of the people that I trust in this industry. So I just wanted to throw that out there as a little asterisk and disclaimer.
Yeah, and for your listeners who might not be in a position to utilize ARX specifically anytime soon, we've learned a lot in applying this technology that can be used today for your listeners in their workouts or in their games. Little nuggets have come by that are useful for everybody. Like the idea that the thing that affects recovery the most, we've discovered in the ARX kind of laboratories that have been spread around, because we can tell when someone's under-recovered. even more than your nutrition, which is what a lot of people focus on with recovery, your life stress, and most importantly, your sleep has been found to really mess with recovery. So in your own workouts, if you're at a plateau, or if you're at the same PRs and you haven't upped it recently, or if you just feel a little bit blah, there's all sorts of sleep hygiene sort of things you can do to help along the way. So that's something you can start focusing on pretty much right now, that we've found through using this accurate testing tool. We can tell you that is a very legitimate thing. And then also, we've learned that very little is necessary if it's of a high quality. And so you don't need to be spending 5, 6, 7 hours per week. Even with barbells, you can be doing maybe 2 or 3 weekly workouts that don't last any longer than a half hour or 45 minutes. And for a lot of people, that still saves them a lot of time doing that sort of workout. So there's a whole lot of things for your current audience who's listening going, yeah, great about ARX, but what can you do for me right now? So just focusing on sleep and focusing on trying to make the most efficient use of your workouts without hurting yourself in the process is a huge insight that's been gained from kind of interacting with this technology.
That's great. I appreciate you throwing that advice out there. And, again, just to reiterate, we had a guest on a few episodes back. I think it was episode 21. His name is Sean Stevenson, and he wrote a book called Sleep Smarter. And we had him on to talk all about, the properties of sleep and the
Nice.
quality of sleep and all that stuff. So if you guys haven't read that book, any of you guys out there listening haven't read the book or listened to the episode 21, I believe, great episode. He has the #1 podcast in health and nutrition on iTunes, so definitely a good listen.
Nice. And there's also a TED Talk, he might have even mentioned it, a guy named Kirk Parsley, who is the Navy SEAL doctor. He gave a great TED Talk maybe this past summer or so. That was all about sleep. It's a fantastic talk. So that's another resource that would be cool to check out for your listeners.
Yeah, I'll link that up in the show notes page for sure. All right, guys. Well, before you go, I want to ask, what's exciting and on your plates for the year 2015. So, Nick, I'm going to start with you, and then Jim, we'll jump over to you.
Oh, okay. A lot with GolfTec for sure. We because we're such a large company, we teach millions and millions of golf lessons. And with those golf lessons comes a lot of data, and I think we're just about ready to get started on really describing the swing as accurately as anyone else in the industry. So that's very exciting. I'm really excited about doing some more conditioning with Jim and the rest of the ARX guys as well. And I know a lot of today sounded like a commercial, I suppose, for that. But to your listeners, from an instructor explaining what your average golfer should be trying to do when they exercise, it's really get to the strength training components as fast as you can. We're using ARX just as the tool to do that for the safety side and the convenience and the compliance side. But that's where your golfer should get started. So we do have an exciting year for GolfTec as well as just the conditioning side that we're talking about today.
Awesome. And how about you, Jim?
We're changing the world, man. We're changing the way people exercise. 2015 is going to be huge. We just now are getting up and running at our mass production facility instead of being made one-off. So now we're kind of making these machines in big batches. We're going to be in retirement communities, a bunch of GolfTecs coming up, obviously. We're going to be in corporate wellness initiatives, one-on-one personal training studios, integrated wellness facilities, just as anybody who has muscles can benefit. So ARX this year is just about putting out great content on the website and on the Facebook page, which, bless their hearts, they put me in charge of. We'll see how that goes.
Oh boy!
And and so we're going straight to the top this year. It's going to be a very big year for ARX, and we'll also be going around Paleo FX in late April. We'll be at that conference. We'll be at a thing in New York in early May. Ari Meisel is a guy who's running an efficiency conference out there for entrepreneurs, and this is going to fit into that really nicely because of the efficiency aspect of it. And so just onward and upward for us. And then me personally, my mustache and I will be investigating all the new bourbons that we haven't tried yet, and it's going to be a magical year for both of us.
Very good. And I have to ask, are there any of those ARX machines coming in the St. Louis area where I can get my hands on trying one out?
Right now, your closest bet is checking us out at the Chicago showroom. But we have a couple prospects, but no solid leases signed in St. Louis. So feel free to spread the word, of course. We would love to be putting an ARX in the arch and just taking people through workouts.
You got it. I'll see what I can do about the arch.
Right. If somebody does want to check one out, we'll have some very soon in Denver, Dallas, Chicago, as Jim just mentioned. You can always come up and see me at Oak Brook if you want to check that one out. Philadelphia, Vancouver, and Toronto. So they're all they're coming shortly.
Excellent. All right, and the audience knows I'll have everything linked up that we talked about in the show notes page. I'll have links to the ARX website, how to contact these guys, or how to kind of follow them on Facebook and Twitter and all that good stuff. So, guys, I can't thank you enough for coming on today. I think we had some great stuff that was shared, and I think the audience has gotten a lot of benefit out of today's show.
Thanks, Jeff. Appreciate it.
Thank you for making the time, Jeff.
You got it, guys. As you can tell, these guys are pretty entertaining, and they enjoy what they do. They love what they do, and they are very excited about what's to come in both the golf and the fitness world, and what's happening with GolfTec and with ARX. But I think what we touched on, more importantly than just the companies that they work for and the technology that they have, is just some of the basics of the ideas of strength training and golf and fitness and how it all ties together. And like I said at the beginning of the episode, how important it is to start thinking about this stuff and implementing this into your game in order to make you the best golfer that you can be, to live the strongest life that you can live, but by proxy, that's going to turn your golf game into a much stronger golf game. And so it's going to be very interesting to see what happens in the next few years as far as this technology is concerned and how big this is going to get. Is it going to be something that we see in every clinic, every country club, as country clubs are becoming a lot more popular with the fitness centers and things like that? Is it going to be in the rehab centers? So I'm really excited to see what they do and how this technology is adapted, not just to specifically the GolfTec locations, but pretty much across the board, because it has so many different applications that are possible. Again, the important takeaways that I really find out of this episode are the idea of training for golf, both when you're working on your swing and when you're working on your strength, and that the motor patterns that you're working on in your golf swing are not necessarily enhanced by your strength training. In other words, you doing the golf motion, working with resistance and thinking that you're getting stronger in that motion, does not necessarily carry over to your golf swing the way that you may think it does. And there's a time to work on your golf swing and work on your movement patterns and your sequencing and positions and things like that, but it's not during the time period that you're doing your strength training. When you're strength training, much like we talked about in the episode with my buddy T.E. Francis a couple episodes ago, you have to have your goal in mind for your set portion of time of whatever you're doing. If you're strength training, you're working on your strength. You're not working on strength training and the firing of your hips and sequencing with your shoulders and all that stuff. There's a time for each. And if you focus on one, you're going to get a lot more benefit out of it. That's why I'm intrigued with the fact that they're doing golf lessons and then doing some strength training stuff with these GolfTec and with the ARX. And what you see at a lot of the great facilities around the nation, when you see some of the greatest golf fitness professionals working with their players, they're doing their strength training sessions. Then they might do like some movement pattern stuff separately, but you don't see them doing it all at the same time. So again, just another little soapbox that we want to straighten out here on the 18 Strong podcast. Once again, I want to say thank you to you guys. You guys are awesome. Really appreciate all the feedback. There's a lot of buzz going around on the social media and Facebook, which I appreciate and am kind of am very inspired by, but am still a little bit in awe of. And I want to thank everybody that has supported me in this whole journey. Don't forget to visit the website. We've got some great articles and are continuing to come out with new authors on the website. and let us know what questions you have. You know, I know that there's a lot of questions surrounding a lot of the information that's being pumped out. So shoot us the questions. Ask us on Twitter. You know, we'll get back to you. Me and some of the other people that are helping write for the show and creating some content. Please, if you haven't yet, give us a review on iTunes. Let everybody know how awesome the 18 Strong podcast is, and that they are not in the cool crowd if they're not subscribed to the 18 Strong podcast and listening on a regular basis. Once again, any shares on social media is awesome, and I appreciate you guys so much. Don't forget to train hard, practice smart, and play better golf. Thanks, guys.
Thanks for listening to the 18 Strong podcast at www.18strong.com. And remember, train hard, practice smart, and play better golf.